Vermont, the Green Mountain State, known for its quiet towns, covered bridges, and rolling autumn hills. But beyond the postcards and maple syrup lies another Vermont, one built from whispers, unsolved tragedies, and places locals still cross the street to avoid after dark. Tonight, we leave the safety of the present and step into that hidden Vermont, where history never rests and the past finds ways to speak. You will hear 5 true accounts drawn from archives, old newspaper reports, and the memories of those who swore they'd never speak of them again. We will walk the halls of a doctor's manor where children's laughter turns to screams. Stand in the shadow of a mountain that swallows the living whole. Descend into a hollow so haunted, the very land bears its name. Witness the strange seances of 2 brothers who brought spirits to life in a quiet farmhouse. And finally, stare into the window of a house in the Northeast Kingdom, where someone or something is always watching. These are not tourist tales. You won't find them on the average ghost tour. And by the time the night is over, you may wish you had never heard them at all. This is Vermont's Forgotten Hauntings. Highgate Manor, the Doctor's haunted legacy. On the northern edge of Vermont, where the flat farmland meets the shadow of the Canadian border, there stands a house that does not belong to the present. Highgate Manor. 2 centuries of weather have dulled its brick walls, but not its reputation. Because once, it was home to a man whose medical skill was matched only by the cruelty of his curiosity. The story begins in 1818. Vermont was young then, still recovering from the War of 1812, still a place where wilderness pressed hard against the small towns. That year, a merchant named Captain Steve Keyes built the manor as a display of success. 3 full stories, tall windows to let in the northern light, and a sweeping staircase made from imported oak. For decades, the house stood as a mark of prestige, until the Civil War, when it passed into the hands of Dr. Henry Baxter. Baxter was not a small-town doctor. He had served as a field surgeon during the war, treating both Union and Confederate soldiers. Those who knew him said he was brilliant, but also strange. He kept meticulous notes, sketched human anatomy with the precision of an artist, and collected medical specimens in jars that glistened in lamplight. It's here the local legends begin to fracture from the written record. Dr. Baxter married late in life to a woman named Eleanor Pratt, 20 years his junior. Together they had 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls. But by the census of 1870, only 2 remained alive. The official cause of death for the younger son, Samuel, was pneumonia. The daughter, Clara, died the following year of unknown fever. Yet in the town's oral history, there's another story, that Baxter was testing radical treatments on his own children, blood transfusions, experimental tonics, and prolonged exposure to chemical vapors. A former servant, interviewed decades later for a local paper, claimed she had been ordered to keep the children's windows nailed shut through the winter. She remembered their pale faces and the sound of long coughing fits in the night that never brought relief. One of the most enduring details, passed down from tenant to tenant, is the library floor. In the northeast corner of the room, a dark stain seeps into the wood grain. Tenants have tried sanding it, bleaching it, even replacing the planks, but the mark always returns, as though the wood itself remembers. Some say it is the blood of Samuel, spilled during one of Baxter's final treatments. Others say it is from an entirely different tragedy, a patient gone mad during surgery, slashing his own wrists before the doctor could stop him. Beneath Highgate Manor runs a network of tunnels, low-ceilinged, brick-lined, and damp. The official history says they were part of the Underground Railroad, used to shelter escaped slaves on their way to Canada. This is likely true. Records show Baxter's predecessor was an abolitionist. But locals tell of other uses, of Baxter bringing patients down there for isolation, of strange smells rising from the grates at night, and of muffled cries that carried through the vents. One tunnel runs directly beneath the library, and if you stand in the center of that room late at night, you can sometimes hear the slow drip of water, or something heavier. Over the decades, Highgate Manor changed hands many times, sometimes as a boarding house, sometimes left vacant for years. Tenants report the same patterns. The sound of children running in the upstairs hallway, even when the house is empty. Lamps that flicker just before the smell of antiseptic fills the air. The feeling of being watched from the library door. In 1975, a couple renovating the manor claimed they found a set of small iron shackles bolted to the wall in the basement. They removed them, but within a week, the wife suffered a series of unexplained fainting spells and insisted she could hear breathing at the foot of the bed. They moved out before the renovations were complete. One particularly chilling account comes from 1922, when a smuggler named Thomas Gagnon was on the run from the law. He crossed into Vermont and found shelter in the abandoned manor. When police caught up to him, he was found outside in the snow, shivering and incoherent, muttering about the doctor and the children. When questioned, Gagnon claimed he had seen a man in a long coat descend the main staircase carrying what looked like a sleeping child. The man walked into the library and vanished through the far wall. When officers searched, they found no hidden passage, only the cold, empty room and that same dark stain on the floor. Today, Highgate Manor stands as a bed and breakfast, catering to the curious and the brave. Guests sign a waiver acknowledging the possibility of paranormal activity. Many stay the night without incident. Others leave abruptly, often before dawn, complaining of a child's voice asking, "Is he gone yet?" The sound of someone sharpening tools in the basement. Sudden, overwhelming dizziness when standing on the library stain. One guest, a retired nurse from Albany, swears she woke to find a man in 19th century medical attire leaning over her with a scalpel. When she screamed, he simply stepped backward into the shadows and was gone. The legend of Dr. Henry Baxter is stitched into the fabric of Highgate itself. The townspeople may smile politely when asked about the manor, but their eyes often dart away. They will tell you it's just an old house with old stories. But if you ever find yourself there, standing in the library late at night, take a step toward that dark corner of the floor. Lean close enough to see the stain in the moonlight, and listen. Because some guests swear they can still hear the faint, raspy breath of a child, waiting for the doctor to leave. 2. The Bennington Triangle, America's most haunting disappearances. The wind in Glastonbury, Vermont doesn't whistle, it groans. A deep, hollow sound, like the forest is breathing through ancient lungs. And if you stand still long enough, you'll swear it's not the wind at all, but something watching you. This is the Bennington Triangle, a mysterious stretch of wilderness in southwestern Vermont where, over the span of just 5 years, 5 people vanished without a trace. No bodies, no clues, no answers. But here's the thing. The Bennington Triangle story doesn't start with those disappearances. It starts long before, with a town that was doomed from the very beginning. Back in the 1800s, Glastonbury was a thriving logging and mining town. Steam engines would groan their way up the mountains, carrying lumber and ore down to Bennington. The land was rich, the community was growing, and then, almost overnight, it all collapsed. The soil was thin, the slopes were too steep, deforestation triggered landslides. The once busy logging railroads became rusting skeletons in the woods. By 1930, the population was in the single digits. That's when the legends began. The Abenaki people, Native Americans who lived here long before settlers, spoke of a cursed place on Glastonbury Mountain. They warned hunters never to cross the summit. They said the land was home to a stone that swallows you whole. And the strange thing, even animals seemed to avoid certain parts of the forest. By the 1940s, Glastonbury was an official ghost town. The forests reclaimed it. The mountains seemed to erase every sign of human life. And then people started vanishing. One, Mitty Rivers, 1945. Mitty Rivers wasn't the type to get lost. He was 74 years old. Yes, but he was a hunter, a guide, a man who knew every inch of the mountain. On November 12, 1945, Mitty led a group of hunters deep into the hills. The day went as planned. Crisp air, frost underfoot, the crunch of leaves. The group started back toward camp in the afternoon. Mitty walked ahead, as always, his orange cap bobbing just out of sight. And then he was gone. The hunters called out. No answer. They fanned out. Nothing. A search party combed the trails for weeks. They found a single rifle cartridge in a stream, maybe dropped, maybe placed, but no middy rivers. It was as if the woods had simply inhaled him. James Tedford, 1949. This one still keeps me up at night. James Tedford was a 68-year-old veteran, traveling home to Bennington from a trip to St. Albans. He boarded a bus, bought a ticket, sat down by the window. Witnesses remembered him, quiet, reading a small notebook. When the bus reached Bennington, Tedford was gone. His luggage was still in the overhead rack. His timetable and bus ticket were neatly folded on the seat. The bus hadn't made any unscheduled stops. Somewhere between St. Albans and Bennington, James Tedford simply vanished into thin air. 4. Paul Jepson, 1950. On October 12, 1950, 8-year-old Paul Jepson was helping his mother at the family dump, back when rural dumps were just open fields on the edge of the forest. His mother left him in the truck for about an hour while she fed the pigs. When she returned, Paul was gone. His little footprints led to the edge of the woods, and then stopped. The boy was wearing a bright red jacket, just like Paula Weldon had. Search dogs picked up his scent. But then the trail went cold at a nearby highway, as if he'd been lifted into the air. The case went cold in days. Schinke, Frida Langer, 1950. The last disappearance in this cluster was different. Frida Langer was 53, an experienced hiker and survivalist. On October 28, 1950, she was camping with her cousin near Somerset Reservoir when she slipped into a stream. Laughing, she told him she'd go change clothes back at camp. She never made it. This time, the search was massive. Helicopters, divers, military units. But nothing turned up until the next spring, when her body was found in an open field that had been thoroughly searched before. The cause of death could not be determined. Theories. Over the years, theories have piled up like leaves in the Bennington woods. Serial killer. But how could one person snatch victims in such varied circumstances and hide all evidence? Wild animals. Possible for one or two, but all five? Without any remains? Accidental death, falls, exposure. Yet why no bodies for years, if ever? UFO abductions. Yes, even this has been suggested. Strange lights in the sky were reported around the same time. The stone that swallows you. An Abenaki legend about a place where the earth opens and takes you. The locals, they just don't go there. Not anymore. Even today, the Bennington Triangle is a place where your cell phone loses signal. Your compass spins aimlessly, and you feel, truly feel, that you're not alone. And maybe you aren't. Because the mountain has a taste for people, and it's still hungry. Subscribe Blink News like this video for more stories. 3. The Bowman House Haunting, Cuttingsville, Vermont. It's just past midnight in the dead of a Vermont winter. Snow swallows the tiny village of Cuttingsville, muffling every sound except for the slow groan of ice shifting along the Black River. Across from the crumbling post office, half hidden behind a tangle of frost-coated maples, stands what's left of the Bowman House. A mansion so old, so stubbornly rooted in the earth, it seems almost alive. Its windows are shattered in places, patched in others with warped plywood. The roof, steep and slate, is hunched under decades of snow damage. And yet, tonight, in the upstairs west window, a dim yellow glow pulses like a heartbeat. A single figure, tall, gaunt, dressed in what looks like a white 19th century dress, moves from one end of the room to the other, stops, turns, and vanishes. The house has been empty for decades. Cuttingsville in the mid-1800s was little more than a rail stop on the Rutland and Burlington line. Farmers, loggers, and a few wealthy industrial families called it home. But none matched the Bowmans in influence. Samuel Bowman, the patriarch, had made his fortune in textiles down in Massachusetts before moving north to Vermont for cleaner air and stronger roots. His wealth bought him 120 acres of rolling pasture and woodland, and in 1867, construction began on a 3-story Italianate mansion, limestone foundations, imported mahogany doors, marble fireplaces brought in by train from New York City. Samuel's wife, Rebecca, was a society figure, educated, multilingual, with a love for hosting elaborate parties. But their wealth came with whispers: unpaid debts in Massachusetts, possible war profiteering during the Civil War, and a quiet rumor that Samuel had been close with more than one servant girl. The Bowman house became both a beacon of local aspiration and a fortress of gossip. On a December evening in 1872, during a Christmas gala at the mansion, Rebecca collapsed in the middle of the parlor, clutching her throat. Guests claimed they heard her rasp, "It burns," before she fell silent. The town doctor attributed it to apoplexy, the 19th century catch-all for sudden stroke or heart failure. But servants whispered that Samuel had been seen pouring Rebecca's drink himself just moments before. Within weeks, Rebecca was in the ground. Samuel draped the house in black mourning cloth. But less than 6 months later, he remarried to a woman 25 years his junior. During the 1880s, Samuel opened his home to invalid veterans, Civil War soldiers who had nowhere to go. It earned him public praise and kept him in the good graces of politicians. But one of these men, Private Thomas Harlan, a gaunt, one-eyed sharpshooter from Pennsylvania, would become the mansion's first ghost story. Harlan often wandered the halls late at night, muttering about unfinished shots and men still bleeding in the dark. In January of 1884, a maid found him hanging in the barn. No note, just a rusted rifle leaning against the wall, pointed toward the house. Within days, guests began complaining about hearing boots pacing in the upstairs west room, the very same where that dim light still appears today. By 1891, Samuel's business was failing. His children had either died young or moved away. His second wife was frequently ill, and the mansion, once a proud symbol of wealth, became a hollow echo chamber. Letters from neighbors at the time, preserved in the Shrewsbury Historical Society, describe strange noises at night as though furniture were dragged across the floors, and a woman sobbing from the south-facing window. Samuel himself began withdrawing, rarely seen outside. The last recorded sighting of him alive was in March of 1896, when a local postman saw him standing at the third-floor window, staring directly at the cemetery across the road. 2 weeks later, he was found dead in his study. With no living heirs willing to claim the estate, the Bowman house entered legal limbo. For decades, it shifted from absentee owners to half-hearted renovators. But every attempt to make it livable again failed. In 1923, a Boston family bought the property, intending to turn it into a summer retreat. They lasted 3 months. Their reason for leaving? They claimed that at exactly 2:17 a.m. every night, all the doors in the house would slam shut at once. In the 1950s, a retired teacher from New Jersey moved in, attracted by the low price. She was found dead at the foot of the stairs less than a year later. Cause: accidental fall. But the autopsy revealed deep bruising around her wrists, as if someone had grabbed her. By the mid-1970s, the house was the subject of local dare games, teens breaking in on Halloween, looking for ghosts. In 1977, a small team of amateur paranormal investigators from Burlington spent 3 nights inside. Their notes, later archived, describe temperature drops of over 20 degrees in seconds. A female voice singing an old hymn, source undetermined. A tall male figure in a black coat, appearing in photographs but invisible to the naked eye. On the 3rd night, one investigator was scratched across the back by an unseen hand. They left before sunrise, refusing to return. Today, the Bowman house is privately owned but empty. The current owner lives out of state and has refused interviews. Locals say that in the deep of winter, when the snow is heaviest, the upstairs west window glows faintly, even with no electricity running to the house. Some believe Rebecca still roams those halls, searching for the truth about her death. Others think Private Harlan paces endlessly, rifle in hand, guarding the mansion against an enemy only he can see. But the most unsettling theory comes from an elderly Cuttingsville resident who grew up next door. He insists. It's not just one ghost, it's the house itself. Every soul that dies inside stays inside. 4. The Dorset Cursed Quarry, a pit that devours the living. It's July 14th, 1983. The afternoon sun hangs heavy over Dorset, Vermont, turning the jagged stone of the abandoned marble quarry into a blinding white oven. The water inside is black, not the gentle blue of a lake, not even the greenish hue of a pond, just a deep, lightless black. 4 local teenagers are laughing, shoving each other near the edge. 17-year-old Mark Phelps is dared to jump from the high ledge, 35 feet above the surface. The others egg him on, calling him a chicken. He grins, runs, and launches himself into the void. The splash echoes off the stone walls. Seconds pass, then more seconds. Then, nothing. One of the kids shouts his name, no answer. A ripple appears, then vanishes, and then, screaming, muffled, distorted, like it's coming from under the water. They can hear it, but it's wrong. Too warped, too deep. By the time rescue divers arrive, the quarry is calm again. Mark is gone. His body will never be recovered. And his friends? Every one of them will swear for the rest of their lives that they heard him screaming from below, long after he should have drowned. To understand the Dorset quarry's curse, you have to start in the late 1700s. Dorset was built on marble, pure, snow white, prized by architects across the new United States. The quarry began operations in 1785, making it the oldest marble quarry in America. Back then, quarrying was dangerous work. Men used hand drills, black powder, and sheer manpower to extract the stone. There were no safety harnesses, no helmets. One misstep, one loose rock, and you'd be gone, falling 50 feet into the jagged pit below. The marble boom turned Dorset into a small but wealthy town. Its marble lined the walls of grand mansions, courthouses, even parts of the New York Public Library. But prosperity came at a cost. The quarry was notorious for accidents. Old ledgers from the Dorset Historical Society list dozens of fatalities. Men crushed by falling blocks, others drowning after slipping into the water-filled pit during the spring thaw. Some names are recorded, many aren't. And there's one particularly disturbing entry from October 12, 1823. Just 2 words scrawled in faded ink. Taken whole. No explanation, no body, just gone. By the mid-1800s, locals had started to avoid the quarry after dark. Some claimed to hear splashing when the water was stilled. Others reported seeing pale shapes moving just below the surface. The worst year on record was 1862. Within 8 months, 5 workers died in unrelated incidents. One was crushed by a swinging block of marble. 2 fell from the high ledge on opposite sides of the pit. Both swore just before falling that something had brushed their legs. A 4th drowned while washing his hands, simply slipped and vanished into the deep. The last was a young apprentice, Eli Carter, who vanished in broad daylight while moving tools. His lunch pail was found sitting neatly by the water's edge. By the early 1900s, whispers turned to legends. Families told their children not to swim there. The quarry wants its due, they'd say. Each drowning was seen not as an accident, but as payment. Between 1930 and 1970, Dorset's population thinned, but the quarry remained a magnet for thrill seekers. And with them came the stories. July 1938. A fisherman claimed to see a white, human-like figure standing waist-deep in the water, though the pit is over 60 feet deep at that spot. August 1951. A group of boys swore they saw a pale hand reach out of the water and grab a floating stick. Summer 1964. A visiting family from New York was enjoying a picnic when their youngest daughter asked, "Who's that lady in the water?" No one else saw her. The girl described her as white and broken. The accounts grew stranger, lights under the water, voices calling divers by name, sudden waves when the air was completely still. In August 1975, Danny McBride, a local college student, dove from the high ledge and didn't resurface. The Vermont State Police called in experienced divers, expecting a routine recovery. But something happened. The first diver, Carl Benson, surfaced after less than 2 minutes, ripping off his mask and shouting, "I'm not going back down there!" He later told authorities he felt crowded, like dozens of people were in the water with him, brushing against his arms and legs in complete darkness. Another diver tried, same result. Danny's body was never recovered. The quarry officially was marked unsafe for swimming. Unofficially, people said it was because it didn't let go of its victims. You'd think that would keep people away. It didn't. On July 4th, 2004, 3 friends from Albany drove to Dorset for a summer escape. By dusk, 2 were dead. Jason Miles and Evan Price both drowned within 15 minutes of each other. Witnesses said Jason jumped in and didn't come up. Evan went in after him. Neither surfaced. What's unsettling is what happened during the rescue attempt. Emergency divers brought up Jason's body after 3 hours, but it was dry. His hair, his skin, bone dry. The medical examiner couldn't explain it. Skeptics point out the dangers. The quarry is over 60 feet deep, with jagged marble walls. The water is shockingly cold, even in summer, causing instant muscle cramps. Visibility is near zero. But locals aren't convinced it's just physics. They talk about the debt theory, the idea that for every few years of safety, the quarry will claim multiple lives at once. They say it's not about swimming skill, it's about timing. If you're there when it's ready, nothing can save you. On September 8, 2019, drone footage of the quarry went viral. A photographer captured a bird's-eye view of the still black water. In one frame, just beneath the surface, a pale face appears, perfectly human, eyes open, staring straight up. The photographer swore it wasn't there when he reviewed the live feed. The image is still debated online, but locals didn't need convincing. To them, it was just another reminder, the quarry is still hungry. Today, Dorset Quarry is fenced off. Signs warn of danger. But if you stand by the edge at sunset, when the light turns the marble walls blood red, you might hear it, a faint splash, a whisper just beyond your ear, and the feeling, like something below is watching, waiting. Because some places don't just remember the dead, they keep them. 5. The Western Shadow Man. It was the autumn of 2009 in western Vermont. One of those nights where the moon looks like it's been smudged into the clouds with charcoal. Henry Wallace, a 62-year-old retiree from Boston, was walking home from the village store with a paper bag of groceries. The shortcut was Lawrence Hill Road, a narrow, unlit lane between tall maples that seemed to lean in toward you, as if eavesdropping. Halfway down, Henry stopped. He couldn't tell you why. Maybe it was the air, suddenly heavy, like someone had draped a wet blanket over the world. Or maybe it was the sound, or rather the lack of it. No crickets, no rustling leaves, just a deep, ringing silence. That's when he saw it. On the crest of the hill, standing dead center in the road, was a silhouette, perfectly black, with no face, no detail, and no sound when it moved. It didn't walk so much as slid, gliding forward without lifting its feet. Henry called out, "Hey, you all right?" The shadow stopped, and then it tilted its head, the way a dog might when it hears a strange sound, except the movement was wrong. Too sharp, too quick. What happened next is something Henry swore he never told anyone for years, because it made him sound insane. The figure stretched, not physically, but visually, like someone had grabbed the top of its head and pulled it upward, distorting it until it towered over the road. And then, without a sound, it simply folded sideways and was gone. Henry dropped his groceries and ran all the way home. That was the night Weston's oldest urban legend woke up again. The locals called him the Shadow Man. Weston is a postcard town, the kind you imagine when someone says New England autumn. Population just over 600. White clapboard houses, a single main street where the general store sells everything from maple syrup to hand-knit scarves. To an outsider, it's timeless charm. To a local, it's the perfect place for a haunting to hide. The village sits on what used to be a major crossroads during the 19th century, when the mills were running and the post road bustled with stagecoaches. But when the railroad skipped Weston, the town was frozen in place, economically and physically. The woods thickened, the houses aged, and the stories began. By 1872, local papers were already running odd little columns, mill workers seeing black forms flitting between buildings at dusk, or a man-shaped darkness standing in the road who vanished when approached. The earliest account I found was from 1863. A Civil War deserter who'd hidden in the hills claimed he was followed nightly by the tall shadow. He never saw a face, just a darker darkness, and swore that when it passed, the night air froze solid in his lungs. Over the decades, the sightings formed a pattern. 1. Timing. Always between 9 p.m. and 3 a.m., never in full daylight. 2. Behavior. The shadow man rarely approached directly. He appeared at a distance, watched silently, and vanished. 3. Effect on witnesses. An immediate drop in temperature, complete stillness in the environment, and, most unsettling, a pressure in the chest, like being underwater. 4. Locations. Primarily Lawrence Hill, the old mill ruins by the West River, and a stretch of Route 100 known locally as Dead Man's Bend. Skeptics claimed it was just people spooking themselves in the dark, but the accounts shared one disturbing commonality. No sound. Not from the figure, not from the surroundings, not even from the witness's own footsteps, as if sound itself was being swallowed. The most famous and terrifying case came from a farmhouse on the outskirts of town. In September 1997, the Wilcox family moved into a century-old property on Steigers Road, a quiet spot ringed by maples and old stone walls. Within the first week, strange things began. Dogs barking at empty corners, light bulbs bursting in cold rooms, the smell of burnt wood, though the stove was unused. Then came the night of October 3rd. Paul Wilcox, the father, woke at 2:47 a.m. to see a tall, black silhouette standing at the foot of his bed. No features, no movement, just there. When he reached for the lamp, nothing happened. The bulb was dead. The figure turned, or seemed to, and glided out into the hallway. Paul chased it, but halfway down the hall he stopped dead. Every door in the house, every single one, was open. And standing in each doorway was another shadow, all identical, all still. The family fled to a motel that night. They returned the next day with friends to retrieve their belongings, only to find every window in the house covered in handprints from the inside. They never went back. The farmhouse still stands empty. In 2013, Mark Easton, a Burlington-based paranormal skeptic, came to Weston to debunk the Shadow Man sightings for a local radio special. He spent 3 nights walking the reported hotspots with cameras and EMF meters, convinced he'd find nothing. On the second night, his recording picked up something unusual. Not a voice, not static, but a total drop to 0 audio for 12 seconds straight. No wind, no insects, no footsteps, just dead silence. When he reviewed the video footage, he saw it, a tall, pitch-black silhouette standing at the tree line. It didn't walk away, it simply blinked out. Easton never publicly claimed it was supernatural, but he never returned to Weston. You'd think a figure like this would fade into folklore, but in Weston, the Shadow Man's reputation is more active than ever. In 2021, a hiker's GoPro captured a strange, elongated figure crossing Lawrence Hill Road in broad daylight. Though when examined closely, its outline blurred unnaturally, like it wasn't really part of the landscape. That same year, 2 different homeowners reported Ring camera footage of a man standing in their driveway at 3 a.m., yet the figure cast no shadow under the motion lights. One woman, 78-year-old Ellen Jameson, claims she's seen him 3 times in her life. "He's not just in the dark," she said. "He is the dark." After 160 years of sightings, no one knows who or what the Weston Shadow Man is. Is he a remnant of some violent past? A trick of the mind in an old New England town? Or something that was always here and always will be? What's certain is this: if you're walking alone on Lawrence Hill at night and the air suddenly goes still and you realize you can't hear your own footsteps, stop. Look up the road. You might just see him watching you. And if you do, don't look away. You've just walked through Vermont's darkest corners, where whispers never fade and shadows never leave. But remember, these were only the ones we could find. Out there, in the cold New England night, there are stories still waiting for someone to hear them. This is Blink News, where we don't just tell the story, we leave the light on for you.